Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you and welcome. Welcome to all of the folks that are here, the sponsors, etc. I want to say a really special thank you to Matt Rissell. He is a legend. We go way back, Matt and I, as he said. I don't think I was as hard on him in that meeting as he said, but you know, maybe I was. Okay, so, but Matt's a legend. We're lucky to have him. Thank you very much, Matt. I really appreciate you doing the introduction. Also, thank you, McKinsey. Thank you, David, the co-chairs of this event, and Samuel from the ITC for helping to organize and get this event going in a great way. We have a really big show for you today. The sponsors have done a great job in making this whole thing happen. I love the theme, as noted by the music, Zoomtown, because to me, I think that's a real, I love puns, I love double entendre, I love play on words, and Zoomtown is a sweet double entendre that both describes the ubiquitous video conferencing, web conferencing that we all do now, but it also describes how the Idaho technology ecosystem and Boise in general is growing quickly and changing quickly and very dynamic. So sort of like the Zoom, or the Zoomies if you have a dog. So the agenda is divided into 4 tracks. And I really do think that there is something here for everybody, so stick around, enjoy it. The first track is Securing Idaho, second, Developing Idaho, the Future of Work, and then Emerging Technologies. I'd also say that there is a 5th and vital track sponsored by Clearwater, which is the mixer. So head on over to, is it Payette? Head on over to Payette Brewery and let's do some mixing. They might have some red wine, and I can show you what Matt means when they call me Purple Teeth. Anyway, so while I'm offering thanks, the people I want to thank most are you. Like, this is a sold out event today. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for turning up. Part of the story that you'll hear is you'll be able to kind of hopefully see and feel how your turning up at events like this actually helps improve the ecosystem for everybody, including yourselves. So thank you very much. Let's get going on the Zoomtown, and we're just lucky to live in Idaho and Boise, in a place that has literally blossomed into a key hub for technology. This is the roadmap for my talk. To tell you a little bit about me, to start with, I'll give my real introduction in a little bit, but to start with, I'm a lifelong Idahoan, a founding technology executive, as Matt said, the past chair, a founder of the ITC with Jay, and a past chair of the ITC. And the reason I'm doing this today is I literally love helping to advance the ecosystem and see how far we've come. And I like to help push on that flywheel to try to get us momentum as we're going. I got introduced. That was great. Thank you, Matt. I'll give you my background and my story. I'll talk a little bit about the brief history of the Idaho ecosystem from, one man's perspective, but I've been involved in the ecosystem for 30 years, 30 years plus, unfortunately. It pains me. And then maybe I'm going to give you some advice, whether you like it or not, on how we can advance the ecosystem personally, as our companies, and as our entire ecosystem. And I would say, it is free advice. It may be worth what you paid for it, but I think we'll have a little fun today as well. Despite that tremendous introduction, there's probably a few of you here in the audience that don't know me, and you're probably sitting there wondering, well, why am I going to listen to this guy for the next 30 minutes? Hopefully, if I share my story with you, it'll help us to connect. It'll give me some credibility in your eyes, and it will get you interested in the rest of the talk. And so the other thing is, I think you'll notice a thread here that, my life is really an analog to the technology ecosystem. Started out, naked and crying, and has developed into something that is really, really powerful. Well, at least it can stand on a stage and talk. So as a lifelong Idahoan, I graduated from Bora High in the 80s. That meant, a couple things. One, that the wasn't much in the way of technology going on in high school, but I did have a sweet mullet. And, I understand, according to the people that are into fashion, that the mullets may be coming back. My lovely wife of 29 years informs me they are not coming back for me. So let's get on to my technology story. My technology story started at Albertsons in 1992. I was still struggling to get my degree on this very campus. I was involved in what you might be familiar with as the 6-year bachelor plan. It took me a little bit, but in the middle of that, in 92, I started at Albertsons. Yes, that was last century. It pains me to say last century, but it's true. That's when I started out. And I started at the technical help desk in their IT department, and I was the 7th person on that team. And the reason I bring up 7 is because that's how many people it took to provide tier 1 support for the entire company around the clock. So different sort of technology, not a lot going on, but it gives you an idea of the scale of the technology operation for the whole company. And the truth was, that's probably good for me because honestly, I knew very little about technology at the time. But I had a PS2 Model 30, which is a very sweet IBM PC, and I knew how to spell DOS, so I guess that made me the most qualified candidate. Again, I didn't know much, just starting out. It was probably also another key deciding factor in the hiring decision was I was willing to work nights, weekends, for $7.35 an hour. So that probably went a long way into helping them make the decision. Now, the fact that I started at Albertsons, I think is sort of important here because the technology ecosystem at the time, 1992, it was driven primarily by traditional companies, not pure play tech companies. These were tech companies and some government, these were traditional companies and some government that basically used their internal IT teams for automation, efficiency, and bringing some level of digitization to their core back office products. It was not really about it wasn't really about pure play tech companies, with the exception of 2. In Boise, the 2 big kind of cornerstone tech companies, Micron and HP, right? They are Idaho miracles. They have, I think, really fun and interesting origin stories as it relates to Idaho, and you should learn those because they give a really, really wonderful example, real life example of what can happen when things go right. Now, I want to call out another notable exception of the time because people forget about them all the time, and that is the Idaho National Lab. Having a national lab in our state is a tremendous advantage, and I do not think people will recognize the fact nor appreciate it. Like a national lab, like if I say Lawrence Livermore, they're like, oh, people say that's a national lab, that's a really big deal. Well, we have a national lab in Idaho that's a really big deal as well. Okay, back to my story at Albertsons. I worked at Albertsons for 14 years. So over the course of 14 years, I went to a guy that had a freshly shorn mullet to to doing a lot of different fun and interesting things in technology. The whole time Albertsons was growing like crazy. And I mean crazy. They 10x'd their store count. They 10x'd their employee count. And by measures that relate to implementing technology and buying technology and budgeting technology and technology spend, they probably 100x'd or 1,000x'd their implementations of technology. And I was super lucky. I did a lot of fun stuff in IT, and I got to grow my career along with the company growth. My last position there was the head of their what was called the Technology Infrastructure Engineering team. So what that meant was all of the internal infrastructure, the mainframe, servers, middleware, PCs, telecom, networking, even the company-owned satellite division reported to me, and the teams, not me obviously, but the teams did all the engineering for those. So I learned a ton of stuff, and I still think it's interesting today that people were surprised that a grocery company launched and managed satellites, right? This was back when satellites were a big deal. You didn't see thousands of them going across the sky when the lights go out at night. It was kind of a big deal. So my roles advanced as the company advanced. It was awesome. And I would say I learned a massive amount about people. I learned a massive amount about leadership, and I learned a massive amount about technology and what can happen when you do it right. So in 2006, I left Albertsons. And I went to work for a local technology company called Keynote. To give you an idea of the magnitude of this personal change for me, on Friday, I left Albertsons. I pulled out of the parking lot. This is a company that had paid 300,000 employees on a weekly basis. That very Monday, and I did have one of the only weekends in my entire life that I didn't have a cell phone beeper or something else. It was a great weekend. But Monday, I pulled in to a parking lot that was 2 miles down the river to this company called Keynote. And they were starting a small team, and it was less than 10 people. So I could pretty much tell, one, by the size of the parking lot, two, by the total different vibe. It was going to be a very different thing for me. And that company, as I mentioned, was called Keynote. Shout out to Tim and Eileen Barber and Brad Wiskerson. They were with Keynote at the time, and they have done a lot to advance the technology ecosystem. Brad Wiskerson, I would just strongly recommend that you learn who he is, follow him. He's done a massive amount to help the Idaho technology ecosystem. He's tremendously active, and he's had a huge impact on my life. And I'm a lucky man for knowing him, and I recommend you do the same. This little team started a company called Kount. You might have heard of that. And when I say started, I really do mean started. There's a picture of a cocktail napkin. Well, it started at Raw Sushi. One of our founders, Tim Barber, PhD in mathematics from Princeton, and Brad Wiskerson at Raw Sushi sketched out the idea for the business on a napkin at Raw Sushi. And that turned into an 8.5 by 11 spec sheet. And that quickly turned into the realization of zero, as in 0 customers, 0 revenue, 0 servers, 0 code, 0 tech, 0 product, 0 marketing, and 0 sales. So this team built the thing from the ground up. So how many people here have heard of Kount? Right. Well, that makes me feel really good, because we used to ask a room full of 10 people and nobody knew what the hell we were talking about. So thank you. Appreciate that awareness. So Kount's product idea was to use real-time technology to stop people that use stolen credit cards, stolen identities, and stolen credentials to commit fraud on the internet across the globe. This was a real-time challenge, had to be done in less than a blink of an eye, like 250 milliseconds was our kind of SLA-ish number. And this was a fun space to be in, but it was a crowded space. It brought us into competition with some of the largest companies in the world, and it brought us into combat, so to speak, with sophisticated fraudsters and criminals that were our enemy because they were attacking our customers. Very dynamic time. I learned a lot. The entire team learned a lot. We grew a lot. But I'll be honest, I always felt great about the impact that we were having on the world. I always felt like this was a truly morally compelling business. You know, what could be better than protecting companies around the globe from criminals and fraudsters? Great time, but obviously wasn't easy. Matt talked about sitting at the end of the bed and sucking your thumb, and that's probably not an exaggeration. So it felt great. It still feels great. Kount would eventually go on to be a global leader in the space. Our first customer was our sister company called ClickBank, another great local technology company that deserves a shout out. After we got kind of the minimum viable product and we kind of got rolling, we pretty quickly signed some very big names. For example, early on we signed Staples, which at the time was the 4th largest e-commerce retailer on the planet. Shortly after that, we signed Chase Bank, one of the world's largest financial institutions. We signed Braintree, who was acquired by PayPal, and their technology became the heart of PayPal's B2B payment system. One of the reasons that we signed Braintree is their COO at the time. His name was Juan Benitez. He's a graduate of Boise High. His dad was an executive at Micron, and he knew that just because we came from Idaho didn't mean we didn't have great stuff. And he objectively evaluated us. He did a great job, and he helped us do that. It was a really, really big deal. So we signed those big ones. We signed other big ones, and then we signed thousands and thousands more. We were on the grow, as they say. In 2015, I was a COO of Kount. We were about an 8-year-old overnight success. That success earned us an $80 million investment from one of the largest and most sophisticated private equity firms on the planet. They're called CVC. That money meant that we were ready to scale globally, create some new products, invest in AI and machine learning, shout out to Josh, and continue to build the team out for growth. CVC is a vital part of the story. Funding is a vital part of the story for technology companies, but I will tell you, funding is more than money. CVC brought ballers to the board. Industry titans, legends. One, for example, Linda Fain Levinson, first female partner at McKinsey. People say, I think something of a legend. Maybe not something of a legend, literally a legend. Another one, Gordon Eubanks, a titan of Silicon Valley software, featured prominently in a lot of the stories around how software grew and developed in Silicon Valley. A great guy. Now, imagine a board meeting. Imagine Brad Oskirchen, Linda Fain Levinson, Gordon Eubanks, and this former guy, or this guy with a formerly had a sweet mullet, arguing points with them. It was not easy, but they were super, super helpful. The goal from that investment, the money comes with some objectives, right? And the goal was to continue providing massive value to our customers and stopping the criminals, and hopefully within 5 years, 5x the value of the company. This 5x in 5 years, that's not a layup. And I'll be honest with you, CVC was very tough. But what I will tell you, they were a great partner, the kind of partner that makes you better than you ever knew you could be. And they were very helpful, and funding's very important. But it is not easy. The company took the money. We added tech, we added people, we added intellectual property and patents, we added and improved machine learning and AI. Shout out to Josh. We kept adding customers. Quite a fun ride. And I can tell you for sure, yes, I personally made a ton of mistakes, but the team always managed to course correct. Always managed to figure out a way to continue adding value. Along the way, we faced new generations of sophisticated competitors. We faced new generations of very sophisticated criminals and criminal fraud networks that were attacking our customers. But we persevered, like Matt said. And I would say that our relationship with our customers and the way we treated them and the way we added value generated a lot of word of mouth. It generated a lot of awards from our customers, as this sweet slide says. Those customers were a huge part of our success. So fast forward to February 2021. I'm the Chief Customer Experience Officer at Kount. We were acquired by Equifax for $640 million. This result exceeded the 5x target, and I think most folks would consider it a pretty big win. The thing now, I've since retired in this middle of December, but I really honestly feel like the team with this amazing parent company at Kount is in a position to change the world again. I'm very proud of the team, I'm proud of the tech, and I'm proud of the value we created for our customers. So we're up to kind of present day. I played a part in Kount's success, but the reason I'm telling you this is not to talk about the success, but hopefully maybe we've connected a little bit. I was there. I've gone through quite a bit. I've been through the stuff, and I think maybe some of this is the stuff that you're hoping to encounter or you're encountering now. And hopefully you feel like the rest of this talk is worth listening to. We've got about 20 minutes to go or so. And even if you're not, please don't get up and walk out. That really, really kills the room. So anyway, so I hope you feel like some of this advice I'm about to give is worth listening to. I'm going to talk about my perspective on how far we've come as a technology ecosystem, how far we can go, and I'm going to emphasize this entire time that we are all in this together, because if we want 1,000 more counts, we're all in this together, and we've got to help build a vibrant and dynamic ecosystem. Okay, the Idaho technology ecosystem, where we came from. This is a brief and abridged history of the technology ecosystem in Idaho from a person that's been involved for the last 30 years or so. I'm choosing to break the ecosystem into 3 phases. The first is phase 1, which is roughly prior to 2003. Then phase 2, which is 2003 to right now, this very moment in time. And phase next, which is this very moment in time going forward. So in phase one, again, roughly 2003 and earlier, traditional tech companies and governments were leveraging their internal IT shops to improve internal systems. Pretty basic stuff. It's just like what Albertsons was doing and what I was trying to do at Albertsons. Again, the notable and massive exceptions, HP, Micron, and the National Lab. I'll tell you, at this time, government was not keenly aware of the tech scene. When I say not keenly aware, like not aware at all. The education system hadn't really thought about STEM, and it's probably, honestly, STEM was probably more of a biology term, as in the thing that holds the leaf. And software development was really barely on the radar of higher education in Idaho. In fact, if you wanted to work for a pure play tech company, and you didn't get lucky by hitting HP or Micron, you got on a plane and you commuted to your job every week. And a lot of us that went through the airport, we would see our friends Mondays or Sundays and Fridays. Because you could, if you sat at the bar there, you would see like tons of people rolling in and out. Or I guess you could have sat at the coffee shop too, I suppose, if you're a decent human being. And just to be clear, commuting every week to New York, Chicago, Silicon Valley, I got one word for you: sucks. Okay, that's a hell of a way to live your life. In phase one, I started to think about this concept. Idaho is a wonderful place to live. I call it the Western independent vibe, which means that people don't really stick their nose in your business. You can do kind of whatever you want to do, more or less live and let live. I think this attitude is both good and bad, but one of the downsides is that people can be somewhat, they're somewhat insular. They find it inconvenient or unnerving to get together as community. And this insularness, I don't know if that's a word, but I think it is now, insularness is much better than it was back in phase one, but it's still a bit of a problem today. And you sitting here at this event goes some ways to fixing that, making the ecosystem better. The other thing that was a big part of phase one, and I really want to call your attention to, because it's not done yet, we're getting a lot better, but it's not fixed yet, is what I like to call the Idaho inferiority complex. Now, what this is the perception that tech that comes from Idaho can't be good. Right? And if it does happen to have some redeeming characteristics, it can't be nearly as good as something that was developed in Silicon Valley or New York or Tel Aviv or wherever. You get the picture. I cannot tell you the number of times I sat in a conference room with executives of a prospective customer or partner, or C-level folks from existing customer or partners, and some yahoo walks into the conference room for his 30-minute part of the half-day meeting. Typically, they were an architect of some sort. Don't at me if you're an architect. But they look at our business cards, because you do the traditional pass the business card to every new guest, and he looks at the damn thing, and he says, "Idaho, do you even have internet in Idaho?" God, I hated that. And these, I honestly think they were a little uncomfortable. They were trying to be funny, but I also think that this is truth said in jest, as the old saying goes. So they really meant it deep down, somewhere. They meant that. And I can't tell you, I guess I can tell you, it's probably 100x for the potato comments. But I think we all have had to live with the potato comments. And yes, this did piss me off. But you want to know what really pisses me off? And it still pisses me off today. It's when I get the inferiority complex from people that live here. Right? And I think they should know better. We've done a lot of great stuff. So if you find yourself projecting the inferiority complex, please, please, please base the criticism on legitimate facts, not the 208 area code, all right? We are as good as anywhere, maybe better, all right? Yes. Now, please, please, please don't take this as me saying don't be critical, because we all, as individuals, need legitimate criticism. All companies need legitimate criticism to get better, because I can guarantee you that we have an infinite capacity to improve in ourselves and our companies. Back to the inferiority complex, though. So one of the things is, I know it's real because I felt it personally, right? I've been involved in the tech community for 30 years, and when I would be on the road and I would tell people about my background, born and raised in Idaho, grew up on a dairy farm, started in technology, helped people all over the world, feel like I'm doing some pretty good stuff. They often, the folks that really liked me and appreciated me, I think they sort of felt bad for me. They were like, they kind of felt bad because I didn't move to New York or Silicon Valley where I could make, big things and big things happen. And, I sort of felt that too. I didn't know if I was doing me and my family a disservice by not taking that leap. But, I've always been 100% all in for work. And I've always been 100% all in for Idaho being home. And, I've been married 29 years, working hard to get to 30. And I honestly believe that Idaho is always going to be my home because it's a great place to live. It's a great place for technology. And for me, I think the neat part is, the cool part is that the rest of the world and the rest of the country has started to figure out what we knew all along, that Idaho is a great place for world-class technology. I would be remiss if I didn't give bad times its due, because during this phase we had the .com crash. That was a big deal. Hard times, definitely not easy, but there's always going to be some hard times in any compelling story, and you roll with the punches when it comes. So phase one recap, internal IT shops, big companies and government, a few successful pure play technology companies. We're a little insular, or maybe a lot insular. We got a little bit of this Idaho inferiority complex, and tech talent commuting to New York City, Silicon Valley, Chicago, etc. And to emphasize, commuting every day for work sucks, especially when it involves a plane and you're out of town for an entire week. But there was a little bit more that happened here. And what happened was a spark was lit, some seeds were planted. In this phase, a few pure play technology companies started, and they'd go on to have very successful growth, very successful exits and acquisitions. And these companies in phase one started to put Idaho on the map. And I know I just listed a few of them here. Treetop, Jason Crawforth, Extended Systems, ProClarity, Bob Locken, Truckstop.com, Kinetics, ClickBank, Mark Monitor, Faisal Shah. These phase one companies, there's not a lot of them, but they were pure play companies, and they started to get it together. Idaho starts to get recognized as a place with technology potential. On to phase two, roughly 2003-ish to now. This phase, I started to feel a genuine shift. More technology companies start, grow, and thrive. more support organizations, more supporting service organizations focused on tech, more public sector support, and more higher education support. In short, we were getting all of the key ingredients, and we were sort of experiencing the more cowbell phase. Let's bang that bell a little harder. It's only gonna get better, trust me. Now, take a look at this list of companies compared to the prior list of companies, right? Genuine evidence of technology growth in this phase. And I focused here on technology companies founded in Idaho. This doesn't count the many companies that opened a branch office or a regional office and deepened their commitment to the valley. And I know, I apologize if I missed your company. Stick around, or head to Payette. Don't stick around here because you'll miss the mixer. Head to Payette and I'll buy you a drink to make up for it. Or more accurately, Dave, Clearwater will buy a drink to make up for me, okay? They'll buy you a drink to make up for me. The support organizations that started, these happened, as Matt mentioned, ICEA. There's a real feeling of the need for a broader sense of community to fight the insular problem and the inferiority complex problem, and to work to help everybody achieve our potential. Mark Andreessen, I think he said this in 2011. He said, software will eat the world. Idaho was ahead of that, as evidenced by what Matt said on the Idaho Employee Software Alliance. But they began working at the time, and it was pretty early, 2006, 7, maybe a little bit before that. They started working with higher ed to make sure that the higher ed knew that software can't eat the world without developers. And if you go back to like 2003, across the state, we were graduating single digits on any given year of software developers. And it's not enough to get it done. The Idaho Technology Council started in 2009. At really Jay Larson's behest. He was driving the thing. I can remember the day like it was yesterday. Jay, Peter Midgley, Mike Reynoldson, and we signed the Articles of Incorporation for the ITC in Kount's only conference room at the time. We were so small we had one conference room. But we were working on the community aspect for sure. So some of these companies, or not companies, these support groups that started, Trailhead, Hackfort, the Girl Scouts are here today. Idaho First Robotics is here today. ISSA, a big security group, InfraGard, all of these things started to come together to work closely on developing this community. In phase 2, a handful of very significant exits put Idaho on the map. Clearwater, Matt's T-Sheets, Truckstop.com, Cradlepoint, and of course my beloved Kount. We all had sizable exits that got the attention of not only Boise and Idaho, but the rest of the world as well. We started to get a lot of help, and in no small part because people started to see the success of the companies, but brought a big increase in service providers with a focus on tech. Back in the day, you had a really hard time finding service providers with expertise in tech. In funding, education, accounting, compliance, lawyers, all of those things, finance. It was hard to find them. Even the state and local government got into the game with support for STEM and software development, things like iGEM. And the higher education really stepped up across the state, but Tim Anderson in particular, with Boise State, committed to the objectives of ICEA and ITC And the concept of IC and ITC sort of joined to become Develop.Idaho, as Jay mentioned earlier. And now around the state, the computer science programs graduate 150 to 250 developers a year, which is a massive, massive difference. Before I go on to that, I would say, Tim Anderson, I mentioned Boise State Computer Science, formerly chair. He's going to have some news coming out shortly that there's going to be a new school of computing. I don't think they're ready for a real official announcement yet, but keep your eyes and ears open for that, because that's another turn up. Okay, again, any good story is going to have major calamities. There were two in this phase. The first was a little thing called the global financial crisis. The global financial crisis, 2008, I don't know if you can remember that. I have a hard time remembering it because I block out all the things that are terrifying, and when you're growing a business or starting a business, there's a lot of terrifying things. But 2008, it certainly felt like things were falling apart. And I can remember one particular story. I was having a glass of red wine, not yet to the funny point, but it was hard to laugh, having a glass of red wine with a tech executive. And he confided in me that he had just put $10,000 in gold and he hid it in his garage. And I was, at the time, and you might be like, well, that's crazy. At the time, I was thinking, it's a little odd, but I don't think it's uncalled for. I mean, that's how bad and how weird it was. And Kount was launching in this phase. Hell of a time to try to start a business. Then, of course, the next calamity, the pandemic, which I think we all remember because we're still sort of going through it, accelerated a bunch of technology, led to Zoomtown, and the theme of this conference room. The companies have persevered through those times. So the next phase, this moment going forward. The last slide talked about some bad times. I think we're currently facing some uncertainty here, some uncertainty in the tech ecosystem across the globe. You're hearing about more layoffs and things like that. But I do think the Idaho technology ecosystem is strong. And I want to talk about what we need to do to get better as individuals, companies, as well as how to grow the ecosystem as a whole. As individuals, as each of us, as the heartbeat sitting in the chairs, I like to say, my advice is to continue growing, continue developing, continue lifelong learning, and apply that learning you create to creating value. If you focus on creating value for yourself, your company, and your customers, those customers are going to stick around when times get hard, and they'll pay the bills, and they will allow you to persevere. In short, continue our personal journeys to get better. I'm a big believer that the operating unit of a company is the individual, meaning if you put individuals in a position to make a difference, to make decisions, and to add value, you're going to have teams, departments, and companies that can persevere through damn near anything. So focus on adding value to your customers. Your teams and your companies and your organizations can change the world. When I'm struggling and other people are struggling and they ask me for advice on, as an individual, what do I do? How should I feel about this? I don't feel like I'm good enough or getting it done. I tell people to imagine themselves 5 years in the future, looking back at yourself. And that person 5 years in the future, if you're lucky, looking back at you now, looking back at me now, if I'm lucky, I will be able to say, this guy's pretty dumb, or was pretty dumb. Because the smarter I am in the future, that just is an example of the growth, learning, experience that allowed me to improve and show that. So know that you're going to get better in the future. You've got an infinite capacity to improve. And if you grow a lot, that 5-year self can look back at you today and say, that guy was a complete idiot. Companies. So my advice for companies, the thing about how to grow your company is they tend to be very fact-specific, meaning each company is different in the way it goes to market, the products it creates, how it adds value, etc. But all companies have basically a virtuous cycle. My experience in the last 16 years was with Kount, a software as a service technology business. I'll explain this quick virtuous cycle. So at the top, 12 o'clock is product. That's where the ideas and the concepts come. They pass it to technology or IT. Technology builds a version of that product or that concept, depending on the maturity. And then they pass it to marketing. Marketing has to create a compelling narrative around the product and a compelling explanation for both the market and the inside of the company. The company has to understand it as well or better than the market. And that probably sounds obvious. My experience is that's not how it works at all. Most people operating in a company don't really deeply understand what the product's designed to do. From marketing, it goes to sales. Sales is a vital part of every company. They have a hard job. I would strongly encourage you to get to know your salespeople. I think as core technology people, sometimes it's difficult to acknowledge the difficulty of the sales jobs and the importance of the sales job, but it's vital for growth. So then they pass it to, some companies call it operations, I call it customer success. The thing about this relationship between sales and customer success is that sales makes the promise, customer success keeps it. If that relationship is not right, you're going to hate each other, and it ain't going to go very well. And then everything feeds back into product, and the cycle goes. And the faster that cycle goes, and the better you are at completing that cycle or completing the swing, the better you're going to be able to adapt to the changing environment and competition. And the more products and world-changing features you have, the more these virtuous cycles go in parallel. Now, this is an example for my company. My advice for your companies is figure out what your cycle is. Make sure everybody knows what the cycle is, and make sure that they're working to make the cycle go faster. And there's lots of reasons why it won't go faster. Because if there is leakage or breakage or slowdown in any of the handoffs or inside any of those groups, the whole damn thing can grind to a halt, and you're in some big friggin' trouble. Inside each of those boxes, it's important to have competent leaders. Those leaders should focus on optimizing inside their box, but also making sure the hands-offs are executed well. And you got to do both at the same time. Okay, the ecosystem. This entire ecosystem is important to all of us. It's important to our personal futures, and it's important to the futures of people that aren't sitting in this room or are not part of the ecosystem yet. The new companies that will form, the new companies that will move here, our friends, our families, our neighbors. The ecosystem is important, and the ecosystem grows much the same way as companies grow. It's the flywheel. Sometimes it's a few people pushing on the flywheel, as Matt and Jay talked about. Idaho Software Employers Alliance. There was a few people pushing on the flywheel. I can tell you it is a lot better when more people are pushing on the flywheel. And I'm here to tell you that you, in fact, can help push. And I actually think you have an obligation to help push, to help make this ecosystem the best it can be, so we can all achieve our potential. So turn up and help, please. I'm asking you to make the most of the opportunity that you have today. McKinsey said, we got to get people mixing, talking, interacting, really doing some not hard networking, some real networking. So enjoy this amazing event, because I can tell you, we had nothing like this in phase 1, and we sure as hell needed them. And so by networking today and putting real effort into it, you're going to help improve the ecosystem. I think, if some people want to know how to network, and the best advice I ever got is, Rich, just be genuinely interested, and you will be genuinely interesting. Care about what other people say, and for some reason they're going to care about what you say. Learn, expand your horizons, talk to people. It's going to be great. And then I would ask you to go out of your way to follow Develop.Idaho, follow the ITC, follow all of those groups that I had listed. And yes, there's a lot of them that make up the community, but know what they're doing. And then pick the couple that you like. I don't know if it's Girl Scouts or Idaho First Robotics. Support them. And a lot of times you support them just by turning up. You go to their events. You sit at the table. You look at the guy wearing the jacket, and then you get a chance to network. And I'm telling you, if you turn up to these events, it's going to be better for you. Like, there's some enlightened self-interest in it. You will improve. It'll be better for you, and you'll improve the ecosystem and help other folks out. We came off of a period where we weren't really allowed or able to meet face-to-face. This is a gift. Like, it's just a gift. Enjoy it. Don't forget the bullshit we went through. Sorry. I just got my PG-13 rating. All right, so but I'll just say, here's the call to action. Become a part of the broader community. Don't be a spectator. Turn up, and it'll be fun. Okay? And then people that know me, Matt says I can be funny. I really have more of a dad joke sort of personality. So here's your visualization. Don't be a deadbeat. Turn up, all right? Turn up to the events. Okay. Thank you.